Hello everybody, welcome back to another important video. Today discussing something that had really come up recently, okay? And I was discussing with a lot of my contemporaries right now, a lot of fellow Zoomers, talking about very important elections in Arizona. Again, I didn't make a post-mortem about Arizona because I thought it would be lame and trite. But today we're going to be going through what happened, specifically with Kari Lake, as she seems to be the common denominator with a lot of these electoral issues. And we have to be careful with what's going on because we need to avert losing the elections because we need to win more over anything, okay? So it's really, really important that we do this. There's a lot of reasons as to why. I'll get onto it, okay? So the bottom line is that Kari Lake really fumbled the bag in regards to the election. And one often criticism you'll see from a lot of people that are far right, so to speak, is the fact that she was underfunded. And I completely agree with this. And, you know, the same argument applies to Blake Masters. And you could argue that many different elections would have been flipped had Mitch McConnell been more resourceful with his money that he had. As Senate chair, you should have been able to look here and say, you know what, Murkowski, you don't need any money in Alaska. We're going to send it straight to Arizona. We're going to send it from O'Dea, O'Day didn't deserve anything. Take it from Colorado, put it in Arizona, Nevada, etc. And we need to win these elections, okay? So first and foremost, I completely disagree with the fact that, you know, they didn't fund the elections right because obviously that was really important. And so for Mitch McConnell to have a stick up his own arse is just completely ridiculous. So we'll get over that fact real quick. But to elaborate on the election with Kari Lake, again, we all know that she lost. And she lost by about only 0.6% of the vote. And guys, don't get me wrong. I know what happened, okay? I know what happened. You know what I mean, okay? I'm even going to move the mouse where I'm talking about it, okay? I agree with Kari Lake. So don't jump down my throat. Again, we're on YouTube. We can't really discuss this in detail, but I completely agree that in another, you know, in a different dimension, we see a flipped result. I get that. But we're playing in a unfair system. Okay, we're playing a game where they're cheating. We're playing a football game where the other side has the ref calling the shots. Okay, we can still win, mind you. We just have to do way better than expected. You know, in a game that is fudged up, you can still win as long as you dominate the other team. If it's a really close, like a field goal sort of game, then the yellow cards, all that really plays a part. But if you really win by a lot, they can't really screw you out of it, okay? So, and again, we can't really stop them from doing said thing right now, so the best idea is to maximize our potential despite of the adversity, which is not fair, I grant you. And right now we're talking about an election where we almost won, even despite the fact that they were doing whatever they did last time. And you know what I'm talking about. So overall, I think that it was her election to lose, and you know, I want to bear the most responsibility should be on the candidate. And so when talking about Kari Lake, we need to look at the mistakes she made in respect to all this. Also, in passing, I'll mention that Blake Masters screwed himself over in respect to the Social Security comment he made during the primary, I believe. They play that nonstop. I saw that on TV all the time. If you didn't know already, I'm from Arizona, so I got to see this. And there was a primary with Karen Taylor Robson. And the thing is that, again, would Karen win the election? Probably. I say that because she most likely would have gotten a lot of the vote. It's a lower turnout election. It's a midterm. On top of that, so the Trump base isn't as important, okay? The other thing is that she wouldn't have lost the McCain vote as much as Kari Lake did. And on top of that, Karen Taylor Robson would have had more money. That's really important. But unfortunately for Kari Lake, she kind of unfairly was maligned as a Trumpian from the very start. And even if it were unfair at the beginning, she completely solidified that opinion later on in the election as she just kept on sucking up to Trump over and over again. And again, that's not the best idea. Why? In Arizona, we're talking about an electorate where of course, Donald Trump is popular, but not as popular as he is in Montana, for instance, because there's a contingent, and this is a very crucial, in a purple state, this is really important. You know, that 5 to 10% of Republicans that are like McCain, Cucks, you know, suburbanites, these people need to be appealed to. And so for you to be dissing John McCain after he died is just a really unoptical look. And that definitely did hurt Arizona for Trump in 2016 and 20, which is why you ought to be careful with spitting on his grave. And again, you know, that guy's super lame. But then again, you have to be careful. Watch where the cloud is. Okay, number one. Number two, look at this. You know, we're looking at a election where Doug Ducey wasn't really supporting Kari Lake. Why? Because Doug Ducey personally hated her. And look, I get that Doug Ducey is a cuck and whatnot, but again, we need to have strong relationships so that they can help you out. If you can't co-opt the establishment, they're going to try to sink you. And that's what happened to Kari. If Kari had a better relationship, if she were just kissing and brown-nosing the arse of Ducey, that would have helped a lot with the funding. He would have been able to rub elbows with McConnell, and it would have had a butterfly effect towards helping her get more funding. And not from McConnell necessarily, but from other people. And again, Ducey has a lot of leverage with the governors of the Republican caucus or whatever you call it. Also really important. And again, did she get screwed over because Katie Hobbs refused to debate her? Of course. But then again, you should expect this, okay? So it's not enough to say, well, the Democrats were doing this, so that's why we lost. Look, they're going to do it anyway in any state that's close. So let's just go and overcome it, okay? Let's stop with this bull crap of like, oh, well, I'm disadvantaged, so what? Like, think about it. Oh, I'm short. I'm not going to get any women. Okay, then don't get women then. Like, either you have a positive mentality and you might win, or just resign yourself to losing every time. Okay, so let's keep going. The COVID stuff is a red herring. Don't worry about that. COVID didn't really play a part of the election, okay? So don't even remember that. Also, the abortion thing didn't really hurt or help. It's a very different thing. And that hurt Republicans overall, if anything. It has nothing to do with how far right you were on that issue. It wasn't that big of a deal. So it doesn't matter. Again, the LGBTQ stuff, that doesn't really matter at all, okay? And so just avoid this. Another issue that you'll find with Kari Lake is the problem with this thing she said, which was that, you know, Donald Trump is like my favorite man, you know, after my husband or something. And that just leaves a poor taste in people's mouth, especially if you're not a diehard Trump fan. And again, in Arizona, that is crucial. When we're talking about the suburbs of Maricopa, you ought not be saying that, okay? Because he's not that popular, okay? If you were saying like, oh, I love Reagan, that would have went off better, even if it's like the same thing, you know, morally to do that to your husband. Either way, again, running with the Michael Flynn crowd. Michael Flynn was a good guy, don't get me wrong, and he's probably a nice guy still. But to run with these QAnon people, that's not a good optic. And ultimately, that's optics cancer. And here's the smart thing. Trump doesn't really appeal to Q, but they like him anyway. So he won't really shout out QAnon, but they still like him anyway. That's how you need to have that mentality, okay? Trump never said, I avow David Duke, I avow Richard Spencer. He just let them vote for him and let them project what they wanted from him so that he would win the 2016 election. That's the same mentality. The Q people will vote for Kari Lake if they perceive her as pro-Trump, but she ought not be like, oh, you guys are right about the election. Don't say that shit. Don't hang out with Mike Lindell. Mike Lindell's a nice guy. I saw him in person. He's not a bad person. I get that. He's a cool guy. But again, they're kind of nuts when it comes to this election stuff right here that I'm highlighting. Okay, I can't really talk about it in person. I mean, in public like this on YouTube. But the point is that a lot of what they say about the election is true, but a lot of it is also really bad. And it's really unoptical, especially with what they're pushing. It's just so extravagantly wrong that it makes you look like a dumbass. And what I mean is that, for instance, they'll be like, oh, Trump won by 60% of the popular vote in Arizona. It's something that Mark Fincham said. And again, Mark Fincham is a nice enough guy from what I know. But again, the whole fuck up is about how, again, we're arguing about like tens of thousands of votes in Arizona, and these guys are saying that Trump won by like 100,000. That's just wrong. It didn't happen. That is ridiculous. That is just making you look stupid as hell. Really, really, truthfully. You know, it's like you're taking a truth and you're just making it worse, for instance, okay? It's like if I said, you know, so-and-so threw an interception, and then the other guy's like, well, no, he threw 5 actually. Now you're just making me look like a jackass for bringing it up. So palling around with the Michael Flynn people, the Q people, Fincham, all those people, they're toxic. And again, these are nice enough people. I don't really hate them, but they're just misguided, and they're making everybody look bad in association with that. So keep this in mind, boys. Anyway, all this stuff, like, okay, also, with mail-in votes, she disavowed them and whatnot. Again, you ought to be neutral towards mail-in voting. If people are going to vote for you in person, they're going to do that. And if they're lazy but still will vote for you by mail, then let them do that. Don't say, well, if you're going to vote by mail, then don't vote or something like that. Don't do that, okay? Just say, like, vote however you want, and if you want the best chance for it to count, then do it in person. None of this, like, counter-signaling the mail-in vote, because, again, it doesn't help you. And plus, if you don't have control of the system and you're complaining about the system, you look like a loser, even if you're right about the issue, which you are. So keep that in mind, too. Okay. And again, there was ticket splitting, and this ticket splitting is sussy as hell. As we know, Kimberly Yee did better than her, which is sus. And I'll leave it at that. I don't really know what to take away from that, but, you know, there was a Yee sweep, so to speak. And again, Abe Hamadeh got royally screwed. We love Abe Hamadeh. I met him in person multiple times. He's a great guy. And, you know, he was in a way closer election, and yet he bitched way less than did Kari Lake. And that's because he has a better temperament than Kari. And I think in part because Kari is a really smart person, for a girl that is, she is able to be, you know, like, oh, well, I'm going to appeal to the Trump people by claiming that, oh, it was stolen or whatever. And honestly, that's just a loser's logic. And again, you may be right, but at what cost? People that don't agree with your idea already are just going to hate you more is the issue. And instead of saying like, oh, my ex-girlfriend was a bitch, just get over it. Because even if she was one, other girls don't want to hear that. That's the whole point. And with respect to the gubernatorial race, you know, in even taking it to the national level, Can we get Alan Dershowitz off the screen? He's terrifying. Anyway, so Trump, he started mentioning the 2020 stuff a lot and people started nagging about it. And then he stopped it. So now he doesn't mention it as much, which is perfect because now it's more appealing. He doesn't sound as bitter. That's so important to not be bitter, to be positive, to have good energy. She was radiating negative energy in a lot of cases because of this election stuff. That's not cool. And then all this lawsuit stuff, again, at the very beginning, after the election, a lawsuit might make a difference. It probably won't. But then again, for her to still be suing the court 2, 3, 4 months after the election already ended is not going to do anything. They're not going to throw out the election, obviously. And she knows that. She's smart. She knows that. But no, she's not going to rescind that. And that's a huge issue. You're making yourself look bad. So when you do run for office again, which you undoubtedly will in 2024, when you run for Senate, for anything else, Congress, I don't know, you're going to look like a sore loser. If they know you as the person that was nagging and whining about the election from last time, they're less likely to be voting for you, especially on the off chance you do lose. You're going to make a huge spectacle about it, and people are going to get annoyed with it. So just be careful with that. So to summarize this video, I'm trying to tell you guys that Kari Lake was too optical at points, got way too into the Trump stuff. Right now is grifting off of the Q boomers, which I find morally wrong because she knows these election lawsuits aren't going anywhere and she's still doing them anyway, wasting all these people's time. And, it's a waste. So, in summary, again, getting too close to the sun on the Trump thing in a McCain state, that's stupid. Second of all, the Q stuff is stupid. The election, whatever, the election claims are dumb too. And those three are the big issues. And again, she didn't lose because she was far right. She didn't lose because she was anti-gay or that she was anti-trans or that she was anti-abortion. That's all fine and dandy, actually. That would have been just fine. But this election stuff is cancer. The COVID stuff, don't worry about the COVID stuff. It's specifically the election stuff and the Trump stuff that really lost her the election. And again, I'm a big, big Trump supporter. But again, optics are important. So I'll leave y'all with that. Okay, see y'all in the next video.